So hopefully, can you see a slide showing how mindfulness can help us with stress? Yes?
Yes, I can see.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry, because I've just turned off the visual on everyone, of course, so that I can see the slides. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about what mindfulness and how it can help with stress. I'm going to talk a little bit about what stress does to our bodies and why it's important to try and control it. And I'm going to give you some practical mindfulness exercises that you can use to help you when you feel stressed. So it's a little bit of theory, but quite a lot of practice as well. Just say a little bit about me before we actually start. So I run a company called Yoga Horizons. That, as Suzanne said, I specialize in yoga therapy, where you use yoga to help people with physical or emotional issues, using yoga postures, breathing, and meditation. I also do mindfulness, particularly helping with stress, the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And as Suzanne mentioned, I also do Ayurveda. Ayurveda, for those of you that don't know about it, comes from India. It was created thousands of years ago at the same time as yoga. It's a sister discipline to yoga, and we use diet, lifestyle, and herbs to help people get well. And also some people use massage, not myself, but massage is also part of Ayurveda treatment. So I used to study physiology and biochemistry, so I've always been interested in science and in medicine, but I discovered yoga when I was at university. For many years, I worked in marketing and market research, but in 2011, I became a yoga teacher and then took that a little bit further to become a yoga therapist. And then part of the yoga therapy course that I did introduced me to mindfulness. I tried to meditate for many years and always felt a bit of a failure because I couldn't stop my mind thinking. But I discovered in mindfulness that we don't get rid of our thoughts, we accept that we have thoughts, and we just learn to put them into the background. And we bring in the idea of compassion as well, to actually be kind to ourselves. So I also studied the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And in 2017, I went to a yoga retreat in India where I discovered Ayurveda, which I described earlier. So I then decided to add to my knowledge by studying Ayurveda nutrition and lifestyle, gave up my work in the commercial world, and then took that diploma a little bit further to become a practitioner in Ayurveda in 2020. So before we start learning anything about mindfulness and stress in any detail, we're actually going to experience some one of the key techniques that we use in mindfulness, which is called the body scan meditation. So for this, I'd like you to get nice and comfortable in your seat, sitting in an upright position. We talk about it being a dignified posture, so sort of having nice alignment of your spine rather than slumping. We can look down or we can just gently close the eyes, whatever feels comfortable. Make sure that you feel warm and comfortable. This is going to be a very short body scan meditation, literally lasting about 5 minutes or a little bit longer, but that's, you know, quite short. So let's settle into our bodies now, closing the eyes and letting the breathing settle. Just notice your breath as you inhale and you exhale. Feeling your feet connected to the earth beneath you. Feel your body resting on the chair, feeling the contact with the chair beneath you. And just allow everything to settle. Allow the breathing to become slow and deep and smooth. And we're going to go on a journey through the body, taking our awareness to various different parts of the body that I mentioned, but without doing anything, without changing anything, but just taking our awareness to these different places in the body. And whatever we find, these different places, we don't judge, we don't do anything, we just observe, we just acknowledge what's there. So we're going to start now with the crown of your head. Notice how the crown of your head feels. Notice if there are any sensations there. Perhaps tingling, numbness, tightness, or relaxation. Whatever you find, just observe what it is. And then taking your awareness down into the head, noticing your eyes, your nose, your cheeks, your mouth, and your chin. Noticing your ears, receiving sound. And if you notice that as you take your awareness throughout the body, that your mind starts to wander, that's perfectly natural. It's what minds do. Just notice that your mind has wandered and then gently bring it back to the part of the body that you're focusing on, without judgment. And then letting go of your awareness of the head and the face and moving down now to your neck and your shoulders. Noticing the muscles in this area of the body, being aware of any tension that you discover in your neck and your throat. Perhaps even becoming aware of the air as it travels up and down your throat as you breathe. And then moving your awareness down your shoulders to your arms, to your elbows, your wrists, your hands and fingers. Just being aware of the sensations you discover in your arms and just letting it be. And then shifting your focus to your chest, noticing the subtle rise and fall of your chest as you inhale and exhale. Being aware of your rib cage expanding and contracting. And feel your back resting upon the back of the chair as you're sitting. And then turning your awareness now to your abdomen and your belly. In our belly, we feel our gut feelings, our gut reactions to things. Just notice as you take your attention to this part of your body, what's your attitude to this part of your body? And then moving your awareness to your lower back, your lumbar spine, and your pelvis and hips. And notice the sensations of the buttocks resting on the surface that you're sitting, feeling the weight of your body. And then taking your attention down to your legs, to your thighs, feeling the weight of your legs. And noticing any other sensations in your legs right now. Again, if you've noticed your mind wandering, where you're starting to think about what you're going to be doing next or worrying about something, just gently guide your mind back to the part of the body and the awareness of your legs. Taking your attention now to your knees. Notice if there's any discomfort there. And then down to the calves of your legs, feeling the muscles. And then down to your feet, your ankles and your feet. Feel the feet in contact with the earth. And eventually coming down all the way to your toes, seeing if it's possible to distinguish between each toe. And now taking your attention to the whole of the body, sweeping your attention from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes and tips of your fingers. Just notice as you do that, is there any non-acceptance towards any parts of the body as you gently take your awareness from one part to another? And if you find any areas that are hard to accept or have feelings of pain or discomfort, just bring some compassion to this area, some kindness. And just accept that bodies sometimes have pain and blockage, but we can just rest in awareness with how wonderful our bodies are, having compassion for any pain and appreciation for all the wonderful things our bodies can do. And just rest for a moment or two in this feeling of gratitude for our bodies. And then take a deep inhale now. And as you exhale, dropping the chin down to the chest and opening your eyes. And then bringing the head up. And if you want to have a little stretch, you can stretch the arms up, a little roll of the shoulders, and bring yourself back. So this was a short body scan, just to introduce you to the idea of taking the awareness throughout the body, but with no judgment, just accepting what is. So I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about what mindfulness is. So there's a definition here on this chart, which is from Jon Kabat-Zinn. Jon Kabat-Zinn was an American scientist who discovered Buddhist meditation and realized how beneficial it was and brought it back to the West and introduced it as mindfulness and did lots of studies, scientific studies, to actually prove that mindfulness has very beneficial effects on the body. Of what mindfulness is. It means paying attention. That's what we've just done. We've been paying attention to our bodies, but in a particular way and on purpose, in the present moment. So we really exist in this moment now. We don't think about the past. We don't think about the future. We just exist in this moment that exists now. And we do so without judgment, because judgment often ends up being a negative thing to do. And then there's a second description of what mindfulness is, which comes from the UK National Mindful Parliamentary Report that was done in October 2015. So again, paying attention to what is happening in the present moment, so very similar to Jon Kabat-Zinn, in the mind, in the body, and in the external environment. So that's bringing in a little bit more here, with an attitude of curiosity and kindness. And this is where compassion comes in, being kind, not only to ourselves, but to people around us. So those are a couple of definitions of what mindfulness is. So what does mindfulness involve? It's bringing attention to what's going on in our bodies, what we're thinking about, what we're feeling, and the physical sensations in our body, but doing so with a real intention to really explore what's happening We try and take away any views about what's happened in the past, and we try not to think about what might be happening in the future, because the future can change. We don't bring judgment or criticism. And mindfulness is the opposite of being in automatic pilot. When we're in automatic pilot, we're existing in a way that we're not really taking our attention to what's going on around us. Sometimes you might find that you've driven somewhere and you can't even remember the route. You've done it so often that you've arrived somewhere and you can't even remember how you got there. That's being on automatic pilot. What we try to do in mindfulness is bring our awareness to what's happening around us. So if we practice mindfulness regularly, it gives us an ability to be able to deal with the things that life throws at us. It enables us to be less stressed, and I'll explain more about that in a minute, about how we do that. We can manage our bodies physically and psychologically, and we can learn how to remain calm and centered, whatever is going on around us. So we don't take life and events for granted. We really notice what's going on, and we develop this sense of compassion, both to ourselves and for others. And it enables us, therefore, to live a much happier life, much more a life in balance. So the benefits of mindfulness is all around. The little diagram before at the bottom shows is your mind full, or are you being mindful? So often we live our lives with a very full mind, with masses going on. We talk about it in yoga as being a monkey mind. And often those thoughts are quite negative. But in mindfulness, we try and allow the thoughts to sink into the background so that we become calmer. So instead of reacting emotionally to things that happen to us, we can respond in a more considered way. We notice the habits that we fall into, and we decide, are those good habits or are they bad habits? And if they're habits that we want to change, we can learn how to change them. But we're very much around accepting ourselves, being kind to ourselves, and letting go of the need to control everything. Sometimes when we need to control everything, it makes us feel very tense. So we find a way of just going with the flow a little bit more in life. So in a bit more detail about the benefits of mindfulness, it has many benefits that are mentally beneficial. So it helps to reduce stress. It enables us to be more calm, to be able to concentrate more, to be more resilient, to be able to cope with life, to be able to listen well, to quieten our chattering mind, to think more creatively, and to be more aware of ourselves and others. Physiologically, in other words, in the body, mindfulness can help us to lower our heart rate, to lower our blood pressure, to breathe more deeply, and so to help us to sleep better, to be able to digest better. And I'll explain there's a physical reason why we digest better when we use meditation and mindfulness, and to strengthen our immune system. And emotionally, mindfulness can help us to be more confident, improve our self-esteem, to be kinder, to be more empathetic, more compassionate, and to even help us notice when we've got pain in our body, and to be able to deal with pain in a way that accepts that we have pain, but works out ways that we can release that tension of pain and end up being happier. So I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about stress now. So how common is stress in our daily lives? Now, this are some results from a study that was done in 2018. So you can imagine the stress now in 2022 is even stronger than it was in 2018, as we've had to cope with the pandemic, and now we're having to cope with the prospect of Russia and Ukraine and all of that going on. So even in 2018, the UK study found that 3/4, 74% said that they had felt stress in some point in their lives, that it made them feel overwhelmed or unable to cope. So that's a huge number of people that feel like that. And I can imagine it's even worse now. Almost a third of people, 32%, had experienced some sort of suicidal thoughts because of stress. I mean, again, a huge number of people that have got to the point of stress that it made them feel that it's not worth carrying on. You know, it's horrendous to think of that. And a sixth of people, 16%, said that they'd actually self-harmed as a result of feeling stress. So it's a huge issue for us nowadays. And the more ways that we can find to help us deal with this is definitely going to help people. So what happens when we feel stressed? There's a little bit of science, but for me, it really helps to understand what's going on in the body, and particularly going on in the brain, that explains why stress is so damaging. So when we have a situation that seems threatening, this is beneficial for us, you know, evolutionarily, it was beneficial for us to be able to deal with threatening situations. When the woolly mammoth was going to attack us, it was great that we had a mechanism that activated our neurological, emotional, and hormonal systems. And it happens through the brain. So the nerves from the cerebrum, that's the big kind of curly bit on the top of the diagram, is the sort of more modern part of the brain. It's the thinking part of the brain. It sends, it perceives threat, and it sends messages to the limbic system. The limbic system is an older part of the brain. It's the bit that's colored in the middle of the diagram on the right, and particularly to the hypothalamus, which you might be able to see on the diagram, is a little blue dot, a tiny, tiny part of the brain. And the hypothalamus activates a part of the brain called the amygdala. You might have heard of the amygdala. The amygdala, again, on that diagram, is just that sort of pale lime green color right in the middle. The amygdala activates your fight or flight response. Again, I'm sure you've heard of that. It releases hormones that enables you to either flee from the source of danger or to fight. Now, this is great when it's a woolly mammoth attacking us, but it's not great in our everyday lives nowadays, because what happens now is we have what we call the amygdala hijack. This means that the amygdala activates when there's no serious threat, but we just have somebody hassling us with an email, we have some deadlines, we have a traffic jam. These are ways in which the amygdala gets activated, and it means that we're on high alert all of the time. And what does this do to our body? It means that the hypothalamus connects to our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system controls all the parts of the body that are not under conscious control. So it controls our heartbeat, our blood pressure, enables us to breathe. So all of these happen when we're awake or asleep without us thinking. We can take conscious control of our breathing, but it happens in the background under the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is separated into two parts, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic. You might have heard of this. So when we're in the fight or flight mode, this is really activating the sympathetic nervous system. So it makes us have strong muscles so we can fight or we can run away. It increases our heart rate, so our heart is working really well. It stops us digesting. Digesting is not important when we're running away from a woolly mammoth. It dilates our pupils, it makes us perspire, it makes us think quickly, and it constricts our blood vessels. So this is in fight or flight beneficial, but we're under sympathetic nervous system control too much of our lives. So our heart is working too hard and we are not digesting well. I don't know if you've ever noticed when you feel really stressed, you might have a tummy upset, you might feel, you know, sort of griping pains or get diarrhea or constipation or something like that, because everything shuts down. What we need to do is get a better balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic nervous system does all of the other things. You can see the little diagram on the right. Instead of the pupils dilating, they constrict. The heart rate slows down. The lungs reduce the oxygen intake, and the stomach works better. So the parasympathetic nervous system is activated when we do things like yoga, when we do things like mindfulness or meditation. And this is why these things are so beneficial to us in our very stressful lives. We're going to do a little meditation now to show you what you can do. So I asked you to bring either a little crystal or a pebble. This is something that you know, if a little small pebble or a crystal, you can carry in your pocket. So you can have it with you at any time. You can put your hand in your pocket or perhaps in your handbag, and you can just, when you're feeling a little stressed, angry, or upset, you can just put your hand there and get hold of your pebble, and you remind yourself just to breathe. Now, a simple version of this is just, if you can all just get your pebble or your crystal and pop it in your hand, and just close your eyes now. And just allow everything to settle like we did at the beginning. And you're holding your pebble or your crystal or any other small object. And as you breathe in, you can imagine that you're feeling a little bit stressed. Something's happened to you. You're in a traffic jam. You perhaps wouldn't want to close your eyes in a traffic jam, but you can still grab your crystal and hang on to it in one hand if you're stationary. Or if you're a little bit stressed, somebody's pressurizing you to do something and there's emails flying around or something's not gone to plan. So you notice that you feel stressed. You don't say, I'm not stressed. You notice, you acknowledge that you're feeling stressed. But as you exhale, you can allow yourself to release the stress and invite in its place, a feeling of calm and ease. So just do that a few times now. So just hold your pebble or your crystal. Imagine that you're feeling stressed, acknowledge it, and just say to yourself, as I exhale, I release that feeling of stress, and I invite back in on the next inhale, a feeling of ease and calm. And you do it repeatedly until everything starts to settle. So it's just like a little anchor. It's just a little anchor, your pebble or your crystal, to help connect you and to give you that sense of security that you've got it with you wherever you go, in your pocket or in your handbag. And there are some extra ways that you can bring this, use this as a technique. You can bring in some extra feelings here and imagine there are 4 different ways of doing this. You can use the feeling of it being like a flower. So you might even have a little dried flower that you might use if you use this one. So you're breathing in freshness and breathing out that you feel like a flower. So if that turns you on, if that's the thing that makes you feel calm, wonderful. Imagine that it's a flower. Or you can remind yourself when you feel this pebble or this crystal that it feels stable and solid. And you breathe in feeling solid and stable, and you breathe out feeling like a mountain. There's a mountain meditation. That's one of the meditations that we use in mindfulness. But you can just use it with your little pebble or your crystal. Or if you like the idea of water, you can bring in the power of still water. And so as you inhale, you imagine you're breathing in stillness and you're breathing out the idea of reflecting. Or if you like the idea of spaciousness, you can use that. So as you breathe in spaciousness. And as you breathe out, I am free. So whatever works for you, you modify these things so that it's appropriate to you, just breathing in and out the stress, or just using any of the other techniques to help you. So how does mindfulness help with stress? An increased awareness allows us to notice what's causing us stress, and it helps us to notice when we're beginning to feel stress, and so we can deal with it. It's much easier to deal with it when at the beginning, when we get to boiling point and we're sort of really in panic mode, that's very difficult to deal with. But when we just notice, oh yeah, I'm feeling a bit anxious, my heart's beating a little faster, or I'm feeling a little bit unsure, we can start to use these techniques to help us. So it trains us to take conscious control of our body, particularly our breathing. Our breathing is our friend. It helps us to calm us down, slowing the breath, just closing the eyes and just taking a few deep breaths in and out. Noticing we're beginning to feel a little bit of stress, and we're just letting it just slow down. And because we do that in the early stages, we are teaching our parasympathetic nervous system to help us rest and digest. It's like turning down the volume on our amygdala. When our amygdala is on high alert all the time, we're constantly in fight or flight. As we practice mindfulness with regular practice, we're slowly turning down the volume, not activating the amygdala so quickly. We're learning techniques to calm down the breath. And it becomes easier. Over time, we become more calm, more balanced, like turning down the volume on the radio. So mindfulness can help us to become aware also of our negative self-talk. So evolutionarily, we are programmed to notice the negative slightly more than the positive. This helps us deal with things that are not good for us. But by noticing the negative so much, it tends to become all-encompassing. So we notice when we have that negative self-talk, and we learn how to overcome those. We learn that we have some habitual ways of thinking and some mind traps. So these mind traps can be things like catastrophizing. That means when a little thing happens, but we imagine that it's a lot worse. We make it much worse than it really is. So we might notice, perhaps, we look up at the ceiling, we notice, oh, there's a little damp patch there. And then we start to catastrophize. Oh my goodness, the roof's going to fall in. That damp, it's really bad. We make it worse before we really know what it's all about. And this is all around sort of exaggerating the negative and discounting the positive. So because we evolutionarily notice the negative more, we have to actively work on the positive things. So really working on gratitude, being thankful for things in our lives. At the end of the day, just thinking about 3 little things that might have gone well in that day. And they might be just somebody smiled at us, or somebody said thank you to us. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It just makes us notice the positive much more. Another mind trap is mind reading, where we think we know what other people are thinking, and we often put into their thoughts something sort of negative. And often they're not thinking that at all. They're thinking not negatively about you. They're much more likely to be thinking about themselves. People are, nowhere near as negative as we think they are about other people. Being the eternal expert, it puts a lot of pressure on us. So some people always like to know everything about everything, and therefore, are always on edge because they always have to be the expert. And the other thing that we often say to ourselves, oh, I should lose weight. Oh, I should do some more exercise. Oh, I really shouldn't eat that cream cake. And again, these are things that, we're being judgmental, we're being critical of ourselves. And it's much better to say to ourselves, my body is healthy, and it doesn't want a cream cake. It wants lovely, fresh food instead. So try not to think of the should, just think about the good things that you should do to your body. And many people either blame themselves for things or start to blame other people for things. So this is another mind trap and another way of negative thinking. So there's a little poem that some of you might have heard before. It's called an autobiography in 5 short chapters. I'm going to read this poem to you because it has quite an interesting little meaning that I hope that you can understand. So, chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost, I'm helpless, but it isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find a way out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it, but I still fall in. I can't believe that I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk, but I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault, but I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk round it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. So I hope that you can see what the moral to that little story is. We fall into these habits, we fall into the same traps, but the more we become aware of what we're doing, the more we can avoid falling into these same traps until eventually we don't fall into the traps at all. We walk somewhere else instead. So the final little technique that I'm going to give you that's a useful way to deal with stress is called the stop technique. This is a very useful technique that I used, particularly when I was in business. It's a very simple technique that you can use in your everyday lives. So how do we practice stop? Stop is an acronym. So the S stands for stop. So you notice something is going wrong, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling stressed. So you stop what you're doing, you try to remove yourself from that situation. And you take a few deep breaths, focusing on your breath and your breathing, allowing you to reconnect with the present moment and giving you a buffer between your thoughts and your actions. So what often happens in a situation that stresses us, we react emotionally immediately. This is trying to give us a little break, to take us away, to focus on our breathing, to move away from this situation that's causing us stress. The O stands for observe. Observe yourself. Ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? And what would I like to do given this situation and how I'm feeling? So it's a much more considered response rather than an emotional reaction. So that P stands for proceed. You proceed with your day based on this sense of mindful awareness on how you answered the questions above. And I was just going to show you, but I seem to have mislaid my little stop card, which was stuck on my computer. It's obviously fallen down the side of my desk. I had a little stop printed on a bit of card and is stuck up on my computer, particularly when I was in business. I had an American boss and I would get emails from him that I took to be a bit challenging, and I would immediately email back with a sort of challenge, a re-challenge back, or, you know, sort of saying, of course I've dealt with that, or whatever it is, and that it would escalate and it would all be bad. So I had this little stop sign to remind myself to use this stop technique, to stop, not react immediately, just to take a few breaths, to really think about what was going on, what the situation was, what was the best way to respond to these emails, so that I would wait and I would be much more calm and much more considered, and the situation would not escalate. So this helped me a lot in business, but I also have it on my computer now, just to remind me to use the stop technique. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you found it of interest. I'm going to stop sharing, and then hopefully we can answer some questions for the last few minutes if you have any.
Thank you, Julia. That was fantastic. That was really, really thorough, and some great exercises. Really enjoyed the scanning meditation. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. So anyone got any questions for Julia?
Has anyone used mindfulness techniques in the past? Have any of you had done any mindfulness in the past? Suzanne, you have.
Yeah, I use some mindfulness techniques with my work as well. I like the anchor ones as well, particularly.
Lovely.
Using, you know, something to remind you.
Exactly, just a little something in your hand.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Some people put a little sort of band around their wrist and use that.
Yeah, a good one is some stickers as well, is to get a little pack of stickers and just put them in places where you'd be more inclined to be in autopilot, like the kettle, brushing your teeth, and then bringing your focus into what you're actually doing in that moment.
That's really good. It's interesting that you brought that up, because there are two different parts of mindfulness. There's the formal meditation, which are the sort of like the body scan or the mountain meditation that I mentioned earlier. But then there's also the informal part of mindfulness, which is just bringing mindfulness into your everyday life, where you're just doing the washing up, and instead of thinking about everything else, you actually just concentrate on, oh, I'm cleaning this plate and I'm noticing the bubbles and all of these things. And that can just bring you into a different state of awareness, which is very beneficial. I found that part, you know, just noticing the little things in your life around you so that you're not in autopilot. It's really good.
I use that a lot, especially when I get up. I find it's really useful in the morning, because what you tend to do, and I'm sure everyone relates to this, is you get up and your brain sort of slots in. It goes, where am I? Oh yeah, and you go back to yesterday or issues that you have. But if you go straight into mindfulness and say, my feet are on the floor, I can feel the carpet. I'm going to the bathroom, I'm brushing my teeth. It just doing that for 10 minutes in the morning really starts your day in a better way. So I absolutely love that sort of thing, mindfulness. And I use stop as well, but in a different way to that. So I use it with my clients. So what I do, if people have this spiraling thinking, you know, where they just goes round and round and it doesn't go anywhere, I actually physically go stop. Because what it is it's a break pattern. So it breaks that pattern of thinking, and your brain goes, what? Because it's so used to going like that. It's like, oh, I've got to stop. And then you can put something else in. You can say, I tend to say, is this helping me? Or I'll say to my client, ask yourself, is it helping me? And it just breaks that pattern and that habit, you know, of allowing that to just continue round in a circle, going nowhere.
Yeah. And habits, you know, they're really quite difficult to break. So that's why we have to have the little visual, you know, memory thing, like the stickers, like you mentioned, Suzanne, or, you know, my little sticker on my computer that's happened to have fallen down. You know, because you've got to break that habit and you have to be reminded to do that. So, yeah.
Well, human beings are habitual, aren't we? We are. So,
yeah. And in many ways, you know, being on autopilot and having habits is a benefit. It makes our life easier. So I'm not saying you don't ever have a habit or ever act on autopilot, but it's just being aware of how much of your life is on autopilot, and that's not a good thing.
And questioning it, because some habits we just do And if you actually ask yourself, is this beneficial? You probably say, well, no, I've just done it for a long time. So sometimes it's just about questioning it, isn't it? It's like, actually, do I need to do that? Does it help me?
Yeah. It's noticing at which points your mind wanders off. Like if you're doing something really boring, that you don't need to think about, you start wandering all through your kind of worries and stuff like that. So even in that sense, you can just purposely do something, so mindful exercise that's more interesting than what you're doing.
I think I can't remember what the statistics were, but somebody has calculated the amount of time we spend in the past and the amount of time we spend in the future and how little we spend in the present. And what all mindfulness is doing is trying to bring us back to the present all the time, because that's the only real time. The past has happened, it's gone. The future can be anything different.
Yeah.
So we, just by being in the moment and enjoying that moment and taking the benefit out of it, is helpful.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to remind people as well in like active mindfulness in the everyday stuff, because otherwise people go, I haven't got time to do that.
That's true.
It's just like, well, if you're inclined to catastrophize, for example, I explain that like an avalanche or a snowball running downhill. So if you're inclined to catastrophize, it's going to turn into an avalanche. Even if you interrupt your thoughts for 2 seconds, it doesn't turn into an avalanche. It just interrupts it, so it ends up your thoughts get a little bit more abstract rather than this great big emotional kind of fallout is helpful.
Yeah.
Or if you wake up in that dread of what's today going to bring, I say to people, just do something different. Get out of bed, do something different first, have your favorite bowl, different view, just pay attention, do a different routine.
The other thing that again is sort of slightly scientific thing, but when we get flooded with all of the stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, they can take quite a long time to dissipate in the body. And so a way to help them dissipate more quickly is just to go for a walk or do something active, just kick a ball around or go for a brisk walk. And it just allows that to get out of the system, because otherwise they languish there and they're again putting your body on high alert, even if the stress is already gone.
You find a lot of people with panic attacks, they pace, don't they? Or like my daughter sometimes will walk up and down the stairs if she can feel herself, just to get rid of that extra energy that's
exactly.
That's the thing with the cortisol, isn't it? Is that because, like you were saying, Julia, if you're being chased by a woolly mammoth, you need all that because you're running away. But we sit still with an issue. So, we've got a deadline and it's coming and we're sitting still with it. So all that energy has nowhere to go. We're just flooded with it. So these exercises are really important, and like you say, just going for a walk and rid of that extra energy and calm it down a bit, especially if you can walk in nature.
In nature is so important, definitely. And I think everyone has recognized the importance of nature with the lockdown. When we were initially constricted from going out, we really felt the need, and nature just brings such a lot of benefit.
And you can go through all your senses really easily when you're out in nature, can't you?
Yeah. And just doing that sort of mindful walking, sort of just feeling your feet on the floor and hearing the sounds, smelling.
It's lovely.
Bit of forest bathing.
Things to do.
It's great.
Yes. Yeah, forest bathing's perfect, isn't it, for that?
Definitely.
It's really good.
Any questions? Any other questions? Rosemary?
It's not a question, but it's a kind of quote. The past is gone, the present is a gift, and the future has yet to come.
Exactly.
And if you're feeling stressed at all, it is good to think of that and bring yourself back to the present.
Totally.
Just a suggestion.
No, that's lovely.
No,
really, really good to have lots of different tools, Julia. So it was good to go through the different types as well.
I mean, there are many more. I knew for a short presentation, only to introduce sort of 3 techniques.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It just gives people different ideas, because you don't know how you're going to react in this situation. I mean, I had a situation years ago where I was out running with a friend, and we used to run all around here, which is pitch black at night time, all around Ripley and Ockham. And we were joking about what would happen if something jumped out of the bushes. What would we do? And Karen said she would freeze and I said I'd run. And actually a rabbit, on another occasion we were at a rabbit shot out of a bush, we both like shrieked. I completely froze. All my energy went out of my body. I was like a lump of jelly and I didn't move at all. And she practically levered herself off me and propelled herself a mile. I'm going, oh, you've lost me. And it was like misty. I couldn't see a thing, but that adrenaline just completely left. It was just awful.
Yeah.
And I had to really like bring myself back into my breathing and in my body to get some energy back in order for me to actually move.
That's
I
so
couldn't
interesting.
believe that she'd ditched me.
It wasn't me, by the way.
Oh, not that Karen, another Karen. Karen Best. Some of you know Karen Best.
And that was my maiden name, which always makes me laugh.
So yeah, she did. She completely left me in the pitch black on my own.
But luckily you were all right in the end.
I'm glad it was a rabbit. I'm just glad that I was able to kind of get myself back under some sort of control. But yeah, because I had some ideas about what to do. But you never know. Some people think that they would run or fight. You just don't know until you're in that situation.
You don't.
No,
exactly. You don't. You're right.
Having practiced a few different things that are habits, creating good mindful habits, like you said, Julia, you've got them in your tool bag ready to go, haven't you?
And that's the thing. It's no good trying to use them the first time you get stressed.
No.
That's just not going to help. You've got to do it. You've got to practice them in advance so that they become your natural way of dealing with things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more you do it, the more you practice it, the more it becomes your way of dealing with things.
Your habit, your new better habit.
Your new habit.
It makes meditation much easier as well if you can, because to start with, when you first do mindfulness, your mind just keeps wandering back, and then you realize you've been thinking again for 10 minutes. You're like, oh my God, bring it back. But if you keep doing it, like I used to practice in the shower for, when I first got in the shower in the morning, is just keep going through, what can I feel, what can I taste, what can I smell, what can I hear? And then I'd be thinking again, and I bring myself back, because the shower is really active. You're more inclined to be involved in it. And then eventually, the gaps of me being able to be still and present and listen properly to meditation without my mind wandering off got much easier. So it's a really useful tool for that as well.
Yeah, because what we talk about is like the mindfulness line, and that on one hand you go up and your mind wanders, and on the other hand you go to sleep and you sort of just
I do that too.
So it's kind of, by practice, you learn to slowly get to that point where you can keep into that lovely state of being calm and present and awake, but, with calm thoughts, nothing particular going on. But it's like learning the piano. You can't play a symphony when you first try to play the piano.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it comes into everything. Like if you're healing and you need to focus on bringing the healing through, or if you're a channel, just having that kind of present state, free of all the clutter, just gives you a perfect kind of clear channel for stuff to kind of come through you, so that you're a conduit rather than this kind of scattered all over the place.
Absolutely.
It's brilliant. I just love mindfulness. I think it's so
good.
Useful. So thank you, Julia.
It's a pleasure. Any more questions or comments that anyone would like to say before we finish? Charlie?
Not much, just saying that there is another say about the wandering mind. It is also called the jumping monkey or something like that.
Yes, the monkey mind.
Or the monkey mind, something like that. So it's
yeah, our minds, they like to be busy, and they like to be thinking of lots of things, but sadly often those things are often quite negative. So by learning to calm the mind down and stop those negative thoughts, catching them, and bringing this idea of compassion and gratitude and positivity, really spending a lot of time getting the balance right, because we often are too negative. So we need to really boost up the positive to help, bringing kindness, compassion, gratitude helps with that monkey mind.
It's very hard to get used to that, because we are trained all our lives to think what we do tomorrow, etc. So it's quite difficult. You have to.
It is difficult. I'm not saying it's not easy, and certainly You know, if any of you've worked in business and in the commercial world like I have, you're absolutely trained to be judgmental and analyze and, you know, make decisions. And so all of that tends to be very critical, very negative. You know, you're always looking for the things that can go wrong. And you have to sort of learn, actually, there are, you know, you have to compensate for all of that effect of us with our culture by reminding ourselves to look for the positive in every little aspect of our lives. So, you know, just somebody smiling at you is a positive thing. Just somebody saying thank you is a positive thing. Just being grateful for the fact, you know, I particularly look at, you know, with all of the horrible things that are happening, you know, in Russia and Ukraine, I just think, are we so lucky living here? You know, we've, you know, we're in relative safety and all the rest of it. You know, you just have to be so thankful and not take things for granted. So spending a lot of time on that.
Yeah, gratitude's a really good practice. You know, because that gratitude again is something that brings you back to the now. So
Yes.
it's a really important practice. That feeling of already having something rather than I will have something. Yeah, keeping yourself.
And always wanting, you know, we grasp after things. So in mindfulness, we talk about equanimity, which is like this feeling of balance. We're not pushing away the negative, and we're not grasping for the positive. We're positive, you know, for new things, for, you know, sort of doing something better and, you know, rising up the ladder, earning more, blah, blah, blah. We try and just be nice and calm in the center with this feeling of equanimity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which raises your frequency, which helps with the law of attraction.
Yeah. It's all linked,
It's all
isn't it?
connected.
It's creating a new habit again, isn't it? I mean, we all create bad habits really easily because we're not conscious what we're doing. But when it becomes creating a conscious habit, it feels like an effort.
Yeah.
But after you've done anything a certain amount of times, it gets easier. So it's just really for the first, like if you practice mindfulness every day for a couple of weeks, it gets easier and you'll have bigger pauses and your mind will be stiller. It just suddenly clicks in, but it's like anything else, you have to exercise the muscle in order for that to start to balance out.
Absolutely.
I think with me, there was a time during lockdown where I was part of a little group and we did literally 15 minutes of mindfulness every day. And it was such a brilliant thing to do. It was just 15 minutes, you know, but it was in a group, which gives you that feeling of sort of, you know, connection and all the rest of it. Doing it every day meant that you didn't spend ages kind of getting yourself into the right mode. You were in it in a moment because the body was used to it, the mind was used to it, and you could click in really quickly. So doing little often is fantastic.
Building those neural pathways, isn't it?
Exactly.
A new habit again. So yeah.
Well, to get into a new habit, it takes 21 days.
Yeah.
So, 21 days you have to take into consideration to establish the new habit.
Exactly.
So,
you already know how much or how long it takes, so it helps, but it is not forever.
Exactly, and that's what I say to people. It's only 21 days out of your whole life to create a new habit, whereas they created the bad ones quite easily.
The bad ones are created, I guess, even less, but I don't think so. It's also 21 days for the good ones and the bad ones.
Yeah. It's just you're not aware of it. It doesn't. The bad ones didn't feel like an effort. But no, that's brilliant. It's a really good reminder, Julia. So thank you for
sharing
really
your expertise.
Thank
you, Julia. It was very interesting.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Hopefully you'll have a few more techniques to try.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye everyone.
Thanks everyone
for coming. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night.
Take care.